Professor Ross Garnaut, welcome.
Hello, Chris.
What should the starting price of the carbon tax be?
My recommendation is $20 to $30, and I focus especially on the midpoints of that range.
Around about $26 a tonne. What would that raise?
About 11.5 billion in the first year, rising a bit over time over the first decade.
And how should that money be spent?
The largest commitment should be on tax cuts and other compensation for lower middle income earners, because they will end up paying most of the increase. A large part of the carbon price will be passed on by the companies who initially pay it, passed on to ordinary households, and so the larger part should go in tax cuts, and those who can't be compensated by tax cuts, like beneficiaries and pensioners, should be fully compensated through the social security system.
So just to be perfectly clear about that, even though the government says it's the 1,000 biggest polluters that will be charged, it will end up in the wallets and purses of Australians.
Yes, not 100%, but a high proportion of it. For example, on average, the electricity generators will pass on to households the carbon price that they have to pay.
Should the electricity generators be compensated at all?
No, I don't think so, because they will on average be passing on the electricity increases. They've known about this adjustment for a long time. I think you do have to keep an eye on what's necessary for energy security, but that's not a question of compensation. That's a question of keeping an eye on a number of specific matters related to debt and security of operations.
Isn't there another report which the government hasn't yet published, which is the Morgan Stanley report, which did suggest that there was some threat to energy security because of the carbon tax?
Well, I'm not free to talk about Morgan Stanley report because it was secret, except to say that that wasn't the sort of rigorous analysis that would influence economically literate people.
Should petrol be included in the tax?
What I've suggested that it be included, that the first impact of the petrol be offset by a reduction in excise, and that in turn...
So petrol prices would fall at first?
No, that would be the reduction in excise on day one will be equal to the carbon price on day one, but it's included in...
So it would be neutral?
Day one it's neutral. Over time, I would suggest that other mechanisms be found to compensate for the increases over time in the carbon tax. Most importantly, tax cuts. I think there's room for large tax cuts a few years down the track.
Now, you were saying today, of course, that there will be new jobs because of this, as there was when tariffs fell across the 1980s and 1990s, but some areas of Australia will be disproportionately affected, won't they?
Yes, that's a possibility. And I said today in answer to a question that the most likely area that might be disproportionately affected would be the brown coal electricity areas of Australia, especially the Latrobe Valley. Now, that's not certain, because that region would have a very different future if carbon capture and storage, the capture of carbon and storage underground, was successful. In fact, if that were commercially viable, then that might be an expanding region, and that region has very great possibilities for that. But if that doesn't work, then there will be reduction of employment, and you need some structural adjustment assistance to help the adjustment.
Okay, once the carbon price comes in, should all other green schemes end?
I'm proposing that there should be a large commitment of revenue for what I call innovation, for people doing new things, investing in research, development, demonstration and commercialisation of new technology. So there's a continuing role for that. But of the existing expensive schemes, like the rooftop solar and the renewable energy target, I would propose phasing those out, and I've got suggestions for that in the paper, of course consistent with honouring clear contractual commitments.